Hello and welcome to Online Studio. My name is Jessica Arsenault and I work in the Learning and Community Engagement team at the National Gallery of Canada. As we begin this event, I want to acknowledge that the National Gallery is located on the unceded and unsurrendered territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, who have been the guardians of this territory since time immemorial, in the present, and for the future. When we meet virtually, I think of the many territories on which we are and our responsibilities to each of them. This is the program for tonight's event. First, a short introduction to the event with me. Then artist Adrian Gore will present the setup and the tools required for today's workshop. While you prepare your space, my colleague Letitia will share an artwork from the exhibition Gathered Leaves Discoveries from the Drawing Vault. Finally, we'll spend the rest of the session drawing with Adrian. A few notes before we welcome the artist. This workshop will take place in English. If you would prefer to attend a workshop in French, you can find the list of French online studio sessions and watch past sessions on our website gallery.ca. Cet atelier aura lieu en anglais. Si vous souhaitez participer à une session en français, vous pouvez trouver la liste des ateliers à venir ainsi que les enregistrements des ateliers passés sur notre site web beauxarts.ca. This talk is being recorded and will be available on the gallery's YouTube channel in the coming weeks. Throughout the evening, you're invited to communicate your questions and comments with us by using the Q&A box, which is located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We'll do our best to get to your questions. We are many here tonight. Live captioning is available in English. You can access it by clicking on the CC icon, which is also at the bottom of your Zoom screen. I would now like to present artist Adrian Gore. Adrian Gore, born in Iași, Romania, is an Ottawa-based artist specializing in drawing, painting, and printmaking. His figurative work deconstructs masculine prototypes from historical iconographies at both symbolic and formal levels, integrating artistic anatomy and color theory. Holding an MFA from the University of Windsor and a PhD from Concordia University, his research bridges medieval theology and contemporary art. He teaches at the Ottawa School of Art and has exhibited in Canada, Europe, and the US. His scholarly work appears in Sage journals and other publications. Upcoming exhibitions include the gallery at Penn College in 2025. Welcome, Adrian.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Jessica, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone, for joining this online workshop. This workshop is based on my notes for my class in figure drawing, according to the old masters at Ottawa School of Art, where I'm also the diploma coordinator for the Fine Arts Diploma program. And it's also based on my artistic practice here in Ottawa. So a little bit about me. I spend my time teaching figure drawing, observational drawing, foundational drawing, and art history. And I spend my time here in my studio making artworks towards exhibitions. So I'm happy to be here and share um, a beginner foundational knowledge in figure drawing, which I believe will be helpful to anyone seeing the exhibition Gather Leaves, but also to anyone who is interested in developing observational skills in drawing based on construction lines and on a 3D understanding of form and mass. So let's talk about materials and what we need to prepare for today, and I'll change the camera. So we are going to draw on charcoal paper, which is a heavy weight that has tooth and is good for collecting the powdery pigments, and is great for working with figuration because it allows extensive rubbing. I want to briefly mention that there are two types of other papers that you could use. That there is a higher quality, which has a high rag content, and it's made from cotton acid-free. And there is also a lower quality than this called newsprint or bond paper. and that's good for warm-up exercises. So this paper that I'm using today is somewhere in between in terms of quality. Um, we are going to use charcoal today, and charcoal comes in three forms: vine, uh, pressed, compressed charcoal, and pencil format. So let's talk about each charcoal a little bit individually to understand the differences. So this is made from vine, and it's processed vine, and it's the least permanent of the three forms, and it is recommended for use in quick gestures. As you can see, it's easy to work with, and it's easy to smudge, to remove the marks as well if you want. With I use paper towel for this. And so this charcoal is great for establishing the organizational pattern. So we will be working with this first, and then once we get into details and more of understanding the forms of the human figure, then we'll be using the pencil charcoal. Compressed charcoal, I'm not going to be using it today, but I want to briefly mention about it. It comes in stick and a block shape, and is good for large surfaces. It can create mass and line using the side or the edge, the side or the edge, and this is great. And I use it for large size drawings. Um, and pencil format, they come in various grades, like I have 2B, 4B, and 6B. So they also come in, especially the vine charcoal that you see here comes in medium, well, thin, medium, and thick. And both all these grades are great according to what you need to draw. But um, we are going to primarily, as I said, we are going to use vine leaf and pencil charcoal. We are going to also use a white pencil. This is not charcoal, it's a compressed pigment with a clay base, and I use this for adding highlights or reflected lights. So you can see you can create on top of the charcoal, you can create really nice grays. Um, okay. Now we are going to use eraser. That is, there are many types of eraser. So we have three types here. We have knitted eraser. This is the most important one that we use. I have actually a brand new one here. And this is great because it's pliable, and I'm just unpacking it right now, and can be knitted like clay, and can be knitted into a point. So that's how you can add highlights and control the value. And it's self-cleaning if it's knitted like this. So this is great. This is a plastic eraser, and it's good for really when you want to get rid of really large surfaces. And I don't think I'm going to be using it too much today. And then in the pencil format, which is great for adding details. Okay. Um, in terms of sharpening, I would like to mention it's good to have handy a piece of sandpaper for sharpening the pencil charcoal, and a knife. I sharpen my pencil, and I have few on the side, so this avoids me sharpening during the process of drawing, so I can focus more on drawing. Um, yeah, so I think that's all we need for today. And one more thing I would like to mention is at the end of the drawing, we are going to use hairspray to fix it. So that's it in terms of materials. Another thing that's good to have on the side is a reference picture of the drawing that we are going to focus on today. I have a copy of Camuccini's from the exhibition, and I'll be focusing mostly on this drawing. And I also have uh, an image of another drawing from the exhibition, and I'll make references to it when I speak about proportions.
Thank you, Adrian. So one question that people had was, is it okay if you don't have all the types of charcoal with you tonight? Can you still do the workshop successfully
For sure.
without it?
So exactly. I was just describing the variety of this, but for today we are going to use vine and pencil charcoal.
Wonderful. And if someone doesn't have the vine, is it okay if they just use
Someone
the
doesn't have the
pencil?
fine. Yeah, it's fine. You can
Great.
even use a carbon pencil if that's handy. In the end, it's a drawing material, so
Whichever tool you have, you can practice
whichever
with.
exactly. Yeah, as long as it's black.
Thank you so much. Great. Well, so we'll give people at home just a moment to set up your space. While you're setting up your space, my colleague Leticia will come to share an artwork from the Gathered Leaves Discoveries from the Drawing Vault exhibition. So, welcome, Leticia.
Hello, Jessica. Thank you. As Adrian mentioned, we're going to be looking at the Camuccini together today. First, a couple of words about him. He was the most prominent neoclassical painter in Rome at his time in the early 19th century. He would have been as famous as the sculptor Canova and was commissioned to paint the portrait of both the Pope and the King of Naples. Today, his most important artistic legacy are his drawings. And he has learned to draw by reproducing the paintings of the great masters of the Renaissance and was influenced by the classical painters of his time. He became known specifically for religious scenes, for topics drawn from the history of Rome, and for mythological themes like the one we're looking at today. So, this drawing in particular is taken from a story recounted by Pliny the Elder. It represents a young woman called Cora from the town of Sicyon, located near Corinth in ancient Greece. She is shown here drawing the outline of her lover's shadow, who is about to leave to foreign lands, and she's trying to preserve it. This shadow is projected upon a panel on the right-hand side by a light burning behind Cora, and it stresses the importance of chiaroscuro, the contrast between light and darkness, and it sculpts the bodies of the character and the space in general. In terms of symbolism, a shadow on the wall would be used to represent a person who was alive and absent, and a shadow on the floor, someone who had passed away. Now, looking at the composition of Camuccini in general here, this is very typical of neoclassicism. We have a balanced composition with a foreground, middle ground, and background in a shallow space. We have a clarity of horizontal and vertical lines, sober colors, a dramatic storyline and poses, and bodies with defined musculature and draping, directly drawn from classical art. So all of the above would be in reaction of the extravagance of the Rococo period. Going back to draping and fabric, fabric in particular was believed to be full of expressive potential. And here it is both hung as part of the backdrop on top of one of the panels and expanding into the character's garments. Now, moving into materials and techniques, now that we are zooming into the image, Camuccini uses hatching, which are small lines that are drawn very closely together in black and brown chalk. And he's also using a stump, which would have been a thick roll of leather, felt, or paper to blend the chalk into the white woven paper. Also, fun fact, the title of this drawing is actually The Invention of Painting, whereas the legend represents the birth of two art forms that are not painting. The first one is drawing, as we've seen. So Cora is drawing the shadow in charcoal. And the second one is low relief sculpture. The reason being that Cora's father, who was a potter, was said to have covered the wall where Cora had drawn with clay and would have then molded the silhouette of their young man so it would stand out from the surface. So tonight, just like Camuccini did in his early days as an artist, you will be invited to observe and reproduce works from different artists chosen by Adrian. I wish you all a wonderful session.
Thank you, Leticia. So we'll welcome Adrian back. And if you have questions during the event, just a little reminder that you can put them in the Q&A box, and we'll do our best to bring it to the artist. So welcome back, Adrian.
Great. Okay, so I have multiple copies of the drawing to be able to explain multiple levels of understanding construction lines. So we are going to talk about the classical technique of drawing the human figure as seen in the exhibition Gather Leaves. And I will particularly focus on this drawing because it's very complex in terms of composition, the way the construction lines are being used to create this movement between these two bodies, and it's a lot to discuss about this image. So the idea is that my workshop, it's not about reproducing this drawing in a photographic way. It has to do with understanding the concepts and the anatomical information behind this drawing. And so I really wanted to clarify this, that because um, a beginner's approach to figure drawing is to have the intention that you want to just copy as if it's like in a photographic way. And it's first of all, if you approach that, we will not going to have time to render such a drawing in this workshop. We have around about 1 hour. So it's not about really rendering this until it's done. It's about understanding the foundational, the beginner's concepts and techniques, which are as important as the charcoal and as the eraser. So there are a variety or various modern contemporary definitions of what drawing is, but for this workshop, I will focus on the classical traditional definition of drawing as explained by Robert Beverly Hale in his book Masters in Masterclass in Figure Drawing. So I'll reference a lot of information from this book, and it analyzes drawings from classical periods. And I'm also going to reference this book by Nicolaides, The Natural Way to Draw. So I draw information from this book as well. So if I look at this drawing, I would need, from my perspective, I would need 8 hours to fully render and complete a drawing like this. So my mission today is to give you a sense of how concepts and symbols are are important tools, as important as the materials, in order to create a sense of three-dimensional effect and in a sense of mass. A sense of mass in the sense that the figure looks like it's embedded in an environment. There is a shadow. There are shadows that allows you to read this drawing as being how can I say having linear perspective. So, however, if you can render this drawing in 1 hour, maybe there are people in the audience that they can do this. I believe that what I'm going to discuss today, it's still relevant because it's about construction lines and it's about the classical view of the human form. So the way we are going to draw, before we're going to go into draw, I would like to mention a definition, a few quotes from the books that I mentioned. And I'd like to start with Robert Beverly Hale's definition of what classical drawing is, or at least explains the process in which you start as a beginner and then you evolve by understanding the symbols and the concepts that I'm going to discuss today. So first we draw what we see, then we draw what we know, and finally we see what we know. So when you reach this stage, then you know how to draw like the old masters. I'm going to also go over some other quotes briefly, just to mention some aspects of classical drawing. You can't draw anything unless you know it exists. Many beginners do not draw important forms of the human figure, even if they see it's in front of them, like, for instance, the shoulder braid or the point of the shoulder, called the acromion process. Just because they don't know about it, they will never draw it. So that's an interesting aspect in drawing the human figure. Drawing is knowing where you are going. This is actually a philosophy of classical drawing that's actually the opposite to abstract drawing. In abstract drawing, as explained in a previous workshop by Jennifer Lefort, Abstract drawing is based on you start from something very concrete like this, and you go somewhere where you don't know where you are going. So you are surprised by the result. It's not the case with classical drawing. You start from very abstract concepts like a circle and a square, and you end up with something very concrete like this. And that is a feeling of mass of these forms being embedded in perspective with lights and shadows. Another quick quote, first the general, then the particular. This explains how we start classical drawing and how we are going to start today. Here are actually some examples from Albert Dürer, a Renaissance, Northern Renaissance artist, who is summarizing the human form according to simple geometrical shapes. So I'm going to discuss this process today. And finally, drawing is a series of thoughts with lines around them. It means that classical drawing actually is very conceptual. It's symbolic thinking. So before we start, I'd like to briefly mention, I made here a quick sketch of how the classical drawing starts in 3 stages. So the first stage, it's the shape level, and you can see it's just a square with a vertical and horizontal axis. And these will be the basic construction lines that you need to know when you start drawing the human figure. Then you are converting the shape into a form by adding plane breaks or more planes. So you have a front plane, you have a side plane, and a top plane, and you also have invisible planes, the one that you do not see, for instance, in the cube. And all these planes are very important to be aware of when you draw. And all these planes, as you see, they have a center line and a vertical line. So you need to work with these lines in order to create a drawing like this. And then when you add some value to this form, it converts into a mass. And you can see it has a form shadow. We are going to discuss later once we get to that, and cast shadow. So these are the 3 stages. And I wanted to mention this at the beginning of the drawing process because it becomes more clear in the way I'm going to explain how the construction lines are being employed from start to finish. And I'm going to keep this on the side. So we are going to start with the stick figure. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to look at this drawing by Camuccini, and I'm going to see simple geometrical shapes. You have to really start from point 0 and make it complex like this. So what I'm going to see first, I'm going to see a circle, and you don't have to draw this. We will draw it soon after. I'm just going to clarify how to read this complex drawing in a very simple manner. So you want to see a circle for the cranium, which is from the top of the head, and the bottom of the sphere of the circle for the cranium will be where the bottom of the ear is. So you draw a circle. You want to see the face, which doesn't include the ear, just the facial bones, as an oval. So that's for the face. It's great that this drawing provides two approaches. You have a profile view and a quarter view. I'm going to be focusing more on the quarter view figure because it allows me to explain plane breaks. It's more difficult to draw a person in profile because of the lack of side planes, which gives the dimension of three-dimensional effect. So for instance, the skull on this figure will be where you see the bottom of the ear here. So that will be the sphere for the skull and the oval for the face, which doesn't include the ear, is just this way. Now I have brought a little skull so that I can explain this. You can't talk about figure drawing without a skull. So this sphere would be the sphere for, or the circle for the cranium will be somewhere like here, just behind the face. You see the whole of the ear, it's kind of the center or the midpoint of the sphere. And then the oval of the face includes the mandibula, the zygomatic bone, and it merges. So the head is formed of these two important two big masses. Now, as we move down, we want to see the rib cage as an egg shape. And you have to know where the pit of the neck is, because that tells you the front, the center line. We will talk about this as we start drawing, but it's important to know some artistic landmarks in order to position these shapes. You also have a neck shape for the rib cage. You will have um, a rectangle for the abdomen, for the pelvis. So because here it's covered by the drapery and the knees, and the upper leg is foreshortened, I'm going to guess that the bottom of the pelvis is somewhere here, where the bottom of the upper leg is. So that would be a simple shape for this figure. You want to summarize it like this. And for the arms and legs, when you start drawing, you just want to use axis lines that shows you the direction of the arms and legs. I'm just going to draw them now, and then I'm going to explain why they are positioned this way and not another way. So these legs will be a little bit more difficult to draw. Foreshortening is really the most difficult part of classical drawing, and you have to really understand how the construction lines are behind and underneath, how they are laid out in order to create the three-dimensional effect. And we have the knees here, knee point. So I'm going to draw the axis for the legs from the side of the pelvis. It goes towards the knee, and then it goes towards the ankle. I'm going to stop here because I don't see the leg, but I can guess it. The same thing here, knee, ankle, and then from the ankle, I'll draw another section for the heel bone, and maybe for the high line of the foot. For the arms, in order to position the axis, you need to know where it inserts into the pelvis, into the rib cage. So you have to draw an axis at the pelvic point, like this, and right at the side of the rib cage, you can insert the axis of the arms. So you go from the point of the shoulder to the elbow, from the elbow to the wrist. And then for the palm, just to show the direction, I'm just going to draw an axis line like this. Okay, so this is just briefly mentioning a stick figure. Now we are going to draw it together. So in order to put these shapes together, and as I said, I'm going to focus just on this figure on the right because of the three-quarter view of the figure of the forms. So we need first to draw a gravity line in order to have a vertical axis so that we see what happens on the left and the right side of the figure, and to know how to position these shapes vertically. And what I usually do, I'm going to look at the top of the head and look for the center, and I'm going to drop a plumb line. You don't have to have this, but it's for me to just to explain what a plumb line is. It's basically a gravity line. This is just a thread with an eraser, and if you hold it like this, gravity does its job, and you have a straight line. And that's how you find in figure drawing, that's how you find alignments vertically. And it's very important to know to position the head in relationship to the feet, for instance, so that you get the balance right. So we are going to draw this central line that runs from the top of the head all the way down. And you have to make to delineate the top and the bottom to know how big the figure is in the paper. So when I'm looking at my page, I want to give about 3 fingers up here. I want to have some distance at the top, and I'm going to use, I like it to have it center. So I want to have this plumb line in the center of the page. And very important to mention that you need to start with very soft lines, and you have to use at the beginning um, um, light lines, because you don't want to commit. Best descriptive lines come later at the form stage. So that's something very important, because if you commit too fast, then it's harder to change. And also another thing I would like to mention, there are two styles of drawing. You have drawing style, so when you hold the charcoal like this and you draw as if you write, where you can hold the charcoal drawing style and you have more control over the form this way, over the line this way, because you have the fingers resting on the paper, and then you don't put all the pressure straight on, so then you can control the lightness of the lines. Okay, so this is my gravity line. Now, in order to position these forms of the human figure, I have to talk about a system of measuring the human form according to artistic anatomy. So that's important to talk about, and that's pretty much what I'm going to discuss for the next 20 minutes or so, because you will see that this is what helps me to reproduce this this figure in this way. As I said, you can take a photographic approach to it, and you can use different kinds of construction lines, like you can create a grid, and then you just copy mechanically. But classical drawing is not about that. Classical drawing is more about understanding the invisible parts of the human form. What constructs the human form according to simple geometrical shapes, like a square, for instance, symbolizes the earth. If you read, for instance, what Leonardo da Vinci wrote about classical drawing, he explains that the human form is a copy of the celestial order. So the sphere is celestial, the square is earthy. So the human form kind of reproduces the order of the sky. It's called like microcosm and microcosm. And yeah, old masters, they had a different way of understanding the human form. And it's important to talk about that symbolic way of looking. So we are going to start with the gravity line, and we are going to first divide the height of the whole figure according to a unit that, and the most reliable unit in artistic anatomy is the sternum bone, which is the same distance from the top of the head to the bottom of the nose. So let's start dividing the height of the figure, and I'm going to draw on this figure. I hope there is not a glare on this, but I'll do it here. So you draw the gravity line. So from the top of the head to the bottom of the nose, you have 1 unit. Then you have another unit to the pit of the neck, 2. And I like to write on the side these units because it helps me to understand the proportion. Then the bottom of the nose, the bottom of the sternum, it's where this V shape that you can see in the drawing is happening. There is a V shape. So there, it's another unit, 3. Then the bottom of the rib cage, unit 4. What's happening here, it's a bit hard because of foreshortening. The obliques that are between the rib cage and the pelvic point are a bit shortened because it's kind of, the figure kind of is drawn as if it's bending a little bit forward, where something is happening here. And here I'm going to make reference to Farinati's drawing, because it explains, it's the same principle. Farinati is a late Renaissance artist, and I have it here without construction lines. So there is a difference about 300 years difference between these two artists, and but you can see the style is the same. And I'm using this as a reference because it's a standing figure, so it allows me to explain what's happening with the distance between the rib cage and the pelvis. So if these are the pelvic points where the box of the pelvis is, and you have a side plane here, and here you can see very easily you can spot the obliques, which are the muscles that are between the rib cage and the pelvis. In Camuccini's drawing, this is a bit compressed, so we are going to draw this unit a little bit smaller, 5. Also, another thing, according to each time period, artists will either expand, stretch out these units or compress them. For instance, Farinati is part of the Manierist movement, so it's late Renaissance, and I was calculating the units on Farinati's drawing, and he stretched out the legs, and he ended up from the top of the head to the heel with 12 units, and that's something very idealized, and that's something that Manierist artists did. I'm not sure if Camuccini did exactly the same thing. It's hard to say because the upper legs are foreshortened, so we can't really tell. But if you compare Farinati's drawing, let's say, with a more earlier Renaissance artist like Raphael, for instance, for sure this figure will look more stretched out and idealized in that sense. Okay, so we are going to move with the units in Camuccini's drawing. Um, so then you have another unit to the bottom of the pelvis, which is 6, 5, 6. And now a lot of my students are asking, some of my students ask me, why don't you use the height of the head to see how many times it fits in the height of the whole figure? It's a great approach, but it's not applicable to anatomical landmarks. It will not really help you too much to figure out, for instance, where the pit of the neck is, where the pelvic points are, where the bottom of the sternum is, where the knees are, where the ankle is. So these are important anatomical landmarks that you need to know where they are when you look at the model in order to be able to draw the human figure. So the sternum system that Robert Hale, for instance, explains in his book, and I'm going to show this book again, there is a section, a whole chapter on this. So you can, if you want to delve deeper into this system, for sure, you will learn a lot from that book. So the idea is that you will always going to have 6 units from the top of the head to the bottom of the pelvis when you look at the model. Because all humans will have a sternum bone, will have 2 pelvic points and not 3 pelvic points, will have 1 pit of the neck, and so forth. So knowing these landmarks would definitely allow you to start finding the proportions. As we move forward, we see that the upper leg is foreshortened, so it doesn't have a unit in itself. In here, it collapses with the pelvis in terms of unit. And as you move down from the knee, the lower leg, you can fit this into 2 units. So I'm going to write 7. To the ankle, another unit, 8. And then the bottom of the heel, it's a half unit. Okay, so this way of measuring the human form, according to the sternum system, it's very generalized. Like it's just based on an overall proportion. And then you want to have this in mind when you look at the drawing, or like to reproduce a drawing, or to draw a model, and then you adjust it to what you see. So you start from this general measurements, and then you adjust as you draw. And that's actually how classical drawing is best learned, is not by just delving directly and copying photographically, but is to have like an ideal figure in your mind that you adjust as you draw when you look at the model. So then you find the characteristics of the model in front of you by comparison. And that's something that Albert Dürer, for instance, talks in his book. He has created a lot of imaginary proportions of the human figure, idealized ones as well. And then when he would use that to contrast and compare with real models. Okay,
Adrian,
so yes.
just a question from the public. So the different sections that you're dividing, are they of the same width, or are they different widths? Does that change for each model that you would work with?
Okay, so in your mind, you can have it the same widths. And that's the best approach. So you can have unit number 1, 2, 3, 4. For instance, if you if I can look at Camuccini, Farinati's drawing. If you look at, it has a helmet, but I know where the top of the head is. For instance, if I take the sternum bone and I put it from the bottom of the nose all the way up, and I figure out where the top of the head is. So in a Farinati's drawing, they are almost all equal. All units are equal because it's a actually this is a contrapostal pose. So you can see the axis of the pelvis and the shoulder are um, are meeting into one point, so they are against each other. So, for instance, from the top of the head to the bottom of the nose, that's the first unit. Now, because the head is inclined, the unit from the bottom of the nose to the pit of the neck is shortened. What changes the proportions between these units? It's for shortening. Is the when you see a mass in a being foreshortened. Um, from the pelvic point to the bottom of the sternum, it's another unit that's pretty much equal to this. And then from here to here, it's another unit from the bottom of the rib cage, and that's also pretty equal. This is another unit from the bottom of the rib cage to the pelvic points. This unit is also very equal to the other previous units. It's just, in this case, it's just the unit from the bottom of the nose to the pit of the neck that's a little bit shorter because of foreshortening, as I mentioned. And as you move down, you'll see, I find that from the pelvic point to the bottom of the pelvis, I find that Farinati kind of stretched this unit a little bit too much. And if you look at the upper leg, let's say you take the knee, about you have 2 units. Actually, if I did this, and if you take this, and from the the pelvic point to the bottom of the pelvis will be here. I know the bottom of the pelvis is here because of the triangle that's happening in front here. Um, you'll see that just above the knee, you have 2 more units, and then between here and the ankle, I find that he stretched out the lower leg quite a lot. So, as I said, um, 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 from the top of the head to the bottom of the pelvis, you're always going to have 6 units because of the anatomical landmarks I just mentioned. The legs can be stretched out. But to answer your question, yes, you want to start with these units being equal, and then you adjust them according to what you want to draw. You want to stretch out the figure, then you can stretch out the units. If you want to compress them because you want to draw a hand in foreshortening, you could do that as well. So another point I want to mention about this measuring system, that you do not want to measure very precise. These are just really rough estimates. Okay, so I'll move on with the stick figure. So I have 8.5 units. So I'm going to divide my gravity line into 8.5 units. So the way I do, I go for the center. So I have now 2 sections. And then I'm going to divide this further into 2. And then even more. And then I end up with, and I'm going to extend these to the side. I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I'm going to add a half unit here for the heel. Great. Now, I'm going to start with the cranium, with the circle for it, because I know where it's placed. It's right in the center of the gravity line. So I'm going to have just the cranium. Now I'm going to add the face. The face, if you divide this unit number 2 into half, you can roughly say that that's where the chin is. And then from the chin and just a little bit lower from the top, you can draw the oval of the face. Okay, and now I'm going to convert them into a form. In order to do that, I'll have to add the central line for each form. So a central line tells me the direction in which the face is looking. So if you look at this face, it's looking to the right and a little bit straight, kind of. It's not looking too up or too low. So I know that it's looking to the left, so the vertical line, this is like longitude or meridian if you think this is as if it's the Earth. So this line tells you that it's facing this way. Now I want to draw the line of the eyebrows. I'm going to do it a little bit this way, but it's good to know that how these lines, they travel over the form in the back so that you have a full understanding of the form. So I did that for the skull, and you have to do it for the face as well. So I'm going to extend that central line to the face. So now um, I have this information that the face is pointing, or the mass of the face or the form of the face is pointing to where it's supposed to point. It's to the right, and then if you divide the face, the height, the oval of the face, you go for the base of the cranium tells you where the base of the nose is, and then this line, the central line of the cranium in the back, it tells you where the line of the eyebrows is. So then you have three sections for the face. You have the top of the forehead, the line of the brows, of the brow ridge, the bottom of the nose, and the chin. And so these are divisions that allows you to add smaller masses, smaller forms of the face. For instance, you can add a pyramid for the, or a triangle shape for the nose. For the mouth would be like a half sphere, and on each side of the central line you are going to have the orbits. But let's move on. Now the pit of the neck, as you can see, it's on the gravity line at number 2. And the egg shape of the rib cage is about 2 units, a little bit more than 2 units because it starts a little bit higher. So I'm going to draw the egg shape. And now I have to draw the direction of this egg shape, which is, you can see the face is to the right, but the rib cage faces the opposite way, to the left. So then the central line of the egg shape should be going the other direction. Now you can connect the head to the rib cage with the neck, but the neck doesn't connect to the face, it connects to the skull in the back. So you can draw like a cylinder or a rectangle first, and the neck connects to the top of the rib cage with an elliptical like this. Okay. Here at number 3, I'm going to add the V shape of the rib cage. Okay, now I'm going to move forward, and when I look at Camuccini's drawing, I see that the unit that incorporate units between from the bottom of the rib cage to the pelvic point, it's a bit shortened because of foreshortening. So I'm going to just adjust that height. That's why we are using charcoal like this, because you could easily smudge it, erase it. So I'm going to use this. And you can see that the pelvis has a different angle. And what I usually do, I actually go like this and shift this to my drawing. But you have to know where to position it. So the boxes of the pelvis, they start from below the rib cage to the bottom of the pelvis. So I'm going to position it right here. So this is the axis for the pelvis at the top. Then this line, so I have 4, 5. Then I'm going to adjust my units. Now I'm going to go back to my sternum bone, and I'm going to use 6, and I'm going to add the axis of the pelvis, and I know where the pelvic points are according to the light. I have here, I'm going to reference this drawing here to tell you. You see where, can you see here, it's the bottom of the rib cage, then you can see the obliques, and then it's the drapery. So where this optical boundary kind of goes in like this, it gives me an indication or a clue that that's where the pelvic point would be. So I'm going to use the line between 5 and 7, and that will be the axis for my pelvis. And now the bottom of my pelvis, it's going to be number 6. So they all follow. Now the extremities on the left and the right side usually follows the edges of the rib cage. So if you draw an axis from the side of the rib cage all the way down like this, you can position the boxes of the pelvis. Now, I like to convert the egg shape of the rib cage and the square shape for the pelvis into a form. So what does that mean? It means that I need to add side planes. For the rib cage, it's very easy to figure out where the side plane is. You can see in the drawing quite clearly that the shadow, the main shadow of the rib cage is right here. And that's also an indication where the ribs change direction. And I'm going to briefly show you on a skeleton because that's the easiest way to show. I have a small one. I can't without it. So in order to understand the structure of this drawing, you have to make reference to the skeleton. So you can see that the ribs, how they stem from the sternum bone, they go all the way around to the back where the spine is. But when they go around, they change direction somewhere here. And I'm going to point this. So that will be the front plane. This will be the side plane. And that's what we need to draw. And looking at the drawing, it should be somewhere here. A good practice is to place the rib cage into a box, and that will help you tremendously to figure out the front plane and the side plane. So that's what I'm doing now.
Adrian, just
Yes.
letting you know, you had asked me to tell you when you're about halfway, so we're about halfway.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes. So thank you so much. Um, uh, so I have drawn now the side plane of the rib cage. Now let's convert the squares of the pelvis into boxes. What I forgot to draw here, you can see, is each form, each part of the human figure has to have a central line because the central line tells you the direction in which the forms are going. So I know that the rib cage goes this way. It looks like the central line for the rib cage and the pelvis follows each other. So the central line will be here. Um, so the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to look where the pelvic point is, and you can see it's about here because this is the dark area and this is the light area. And for that, another thing that's useful, not sure when I put my plumb line, but I could use another useful tool in figure drawing is to have a measuring stick. So you could use this to find vertical alignments, and you can see that the pelvic point aligns vertically with the side of the head. I'm going to leave this here. So if I draw down, a line all the way down, I see that the pelvic point is here. That means it looks like I positioned the box of the pelvis too much to the left. And that's fine. I'm going to add the side plane here. And the side of the pelvis will be about, yeah, here. Okay. A very useful construction line for the pelvis is to draw the triangle in the front from the two pelvic points. And I'm going to show you the pelvic points on the skeleton. That's the best way. Okay, so these are the pelvic bones. You see this? You can even feel it on your own body. Like right now, you could touch this part because this part touches the skin. It's not covered by muscles, and that's the best way to learn that you do have two pelvic points. And from these two pelvic points, you can draw a triangle like this to the pubic symphysis, and that tells you the front plane of the pelvis. Okay. So I'm gonna move on with this. Now, another important aspect of the pelvis is the crest. The crest goes up from the pelvic point and it goes in the back. You have to have an understanding of how this box is built in perspective. So you have to understand the hidden planes, like the back side, and you can draw them like this. And the crest goes from the pelvic point all the way in the back where the central line is in the back. The same thing is here. Now, between between the rib cage and the box of the pelvis, you will find the obliques. Okay. And then from the V shape to just a little bit above the pubic symphysis, you can draw another egg shape for the abdomens, and then you have to trace that central line. Okay, so now we just draw the main masses of the human figure. Now we have to draw to connect the arms and the legs. It's easy to do that now because we know the side planes of the main masses. So, for instance, the axis for the upper arms will start on the side of the pelvic box, on the side plane of the pelvic box, just a little bit below the pelvic point. Um, and you need to find out where the knee is. So the way I'm going to find out where the knee is, it's in relationship to the head. So you want to use this vertical line. So I guess it's about at the center. So if you go back to my drawing, I'll retrace that central line, gravity line, and I find out that the knee is here. I'll draw the axis. So let me clarify this drawing here. Okay, the other axis of the upper leg starts from the other side of the pelvis, from the side plane of the pelvis on the other side. So it's somewhere here. Now, how do you spot where this knee is? Well, you could use the sternum. You could use the distance from the bottom of the head, nose to the top of the head to see, and that's exactly the sternum unit. And you can see how many units. It's about 2 units between the knees. So that's a good start. I mean, as I said, you don't have to be very precise. This is really just roughly, and then you can take all the time to adjust this. So I'm going to draw the axis of the upper leg this way. Now I'm going to move on with the axis of the lower leg, and from the knee to the ankle. But I need to know where the ankle is. It's a bit tough to find out where the ankle is in relationship to the head, but if you do it this way, you put this, and then you find out the space between the side of the head to this, and then maybe you compare that to the head. Oh, it's about one. This time is 1.5 units. So I could do that from um, from the center, from the gravity line. So you have the gravity line here. So it's about this much. Okay. So I'm going to do this. And the you start with the lower leg as having 2 units. As I mentioned at the beginning, you could draw a model that has the lower leg 1.5 units. That's fine. You're just going to have to adjust it. But you need to start with general measurements and then you customize it, as I mentioned. And then I believe it's for the bottom of the heel, you have 1/2 unit. Okay, so now let's this one, it's under the garment, so we just leave it like this. You can use 2 units this way. For the arms, we're gonna just draw this arm. Um, the way you insert the axis of the arm, you have to know where the axis of the shoulder is, and then at the side of the rib cage, you have a point. This is called the acromion process, or the shoulder point. And from there, just a little bit below where the glenoid cavity is, you're gonna draw the axis of the upper arm, and usually the elbow goes all the way to the bottom of the rib cage. And then another axis for the lower arm to the wrist, which is, it looks like it's the bottom of the pelvis. And then you have, for the palm of the hand, the best way to summarize it is to use a box-like shape for the palm of the hand. So I'm going to draw a box like this. Just to make sure I don't make it too big.
Just a warning, Adrian, we can see your head in the
Oh, I'm sorry.
no worries.
um, yes. So that's this way. Um, this is the box, and then you can divide this plane and add the cylinders of the fingers, and you can do that for the um, to big for this finger. Can use an egg shape like this and a cylinder. Okay, so this is detail. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to spray it because I want to keep this as a reference and further develop the forms according to artistic anatomy. Maybe we add some muscles, and then at the end we add a general value, and I'll briefly explain how to summarize the value too, because value is also another very important aspect. If you draw all the lights that you see, you may end up with flatness. You in a figure drawing, in a classical drawing, as you can see, light usually comes from top left corner, and it's only one light. If you have multiple lights, it's really bad for the three-dimensional effect. So you have to really simplify light according to one dominant light, one shadow. And maybe I can reference the sketch I made here. That's a chart for the value. So you want to have a dark area and a light area, and you're going to have dominant light, shadow, reflected light, and reflected shadow. So you need to work with these lights um, to add the dimension and to create these forms into mass. Actually, it's a pattern that you apply to all the forms of the body. It's the same thing, just repeated. Okay, so right now I think the drawing is pretty dry. So I'm going to use 4B. It allows me to delve deeper into details. So let's start at the top. So I'm going to scan the drawing from top to bottom and add more information, because that's how you start in classical drawing. You start very simple with very simple construction lines, and then you add extra information. A few points, for instance, a dot. It's not real. It's only real in your mind. Uh, it's a very simple symbol that tells you position. Now, if you take a dot, I mean, in reality, a dot doesn't exist. If you zoom in, you'll see particles here. You're not going to see a dot. Is a dot because your brain reads it as a dot, but in reality, this dot is made of atoms. I'm not sure. You have to really zoom in to see what's happening there. But our brain reads it as a dot. And what that dot tells you, it tells you a position, that this dot is positioned here and not somewhere else. Now, if you take a dot for a walk, it converts into a line. A line is a series of dots that they move towards somewhere. So a line always starts somewhere and it goes somewhere. So these are all concepts that are not really real. You don't really find them in nature. It's just what our brain comes up with to make sense of the visible world. And the old masters were experts in understanding these concepts and put them to great use to create the illusion of dimension. So I wanted to mention this, that's how you should understand these concepts. And then you have a plane. Then you have a side plane, and you convert this into a cube. A side plane, when you have a top plane, a side plane, and a top plane. Now, what happens between these two? It's a connecting lines. We call this plane breaks. A plane break is here. A plane break is here. You can see if you perceive this the upper if you perceive the upper arm is a cylinder, it's easy to spot the plane break on the upper arm. So let's uh, let's start from the top. So I'm going to redraw the sphere of the skull with the central line facing this way, and then I'm going to have the face. And what I want to do now is to really delineate the front plane of the face, which is also called the near high line of the face, which is right here. It's right below, behind the orbit, and it goes towards the chin. So that would be the front plane, and this is the side plane, and this is the front plane. And you need to have a very clear understanding of these two planes. It determines the way you put value on it. So I'm going to mark the top plane of the face. On the sphere of the cranium, you can add a so-called the oval of the temple, which is just behind the orbit. It's this here. If you look at this, this will be the oval of the temple. Okay. The ear is literally between the line of the eyebrows and the bottom of the nose. From the bottom of the ear, you can draw the jaw, and then the mouth can simply can be summarized as a half sphere, kind of like this. I'm just gonna with a central line, and then you put the lips on it. So then you have the chin. Now from the bottom of the ear, you can draw the cylinder again, and then you're going to draw a muscle called sternocleidomastoidean that goes to the pit of the neck. Okay, from the from the pit of the neck, you have the axis of the shoulder, and in the back you have the seventh cervical as a counterpart, and that creates the kind of the top plane of the rib cage. And also from the pelvic points, no, from the shoulder points on each side, you can draw the an arch that kind of stands for a muscle in the back called the trapezoid. To draw the arms, you need to draw a few bones. So from the pit of the neck, you can draw the clavicular bone. It kind of spirals around, and it goes to a point where it meets with the axis with the humerus bone, and that's called the acromion process. And then if you divide the clavicula into two, you know where the deltoid muscle inserts. It inserts right there, and you can use an egg shape for it. And the height of this muscle, it's about, as you can see in the drawing here, it's right here. And that's where the clavicula goes. Okay. Then just underneath the deltoid, you have the pectoral muscle, which is the pectoral muscles are minor muscles, so minor mass. So a big, the rib cage is the dominant form. Or mass if you add value to it. And now on top of this, you have smaller masses connecting to it. So the pectoral muscle really just sits on top of the upper part of the rib cage, and it has to have its own plane break. It has to have its own central line. So that would be that. I'll move below. I will just talk about the egg shape of the rib cage. You always have to have this in mind. Let's move on with the arm. Then you're going to have an egg shape for the biceps, and then you have an egg shape for the triceps. For the lower arm, I would just summarize it as a cylinder. There are 16 muscles going on here, and it's pretty complex. And the wrist, it connects to the palm of the hand this way. So that will be the simplest way of looking at this drawing. And then let's look at the pelvis. The pelvic point, we're here. And I mentioned that the crest goes up from this point and goes in the back and actually meets the sacrum bone in the back. And the sacrum bone then continues with the spine in the back that goes around the rib cage like this. So you see, in figure drawing, it's so important to know what happens behind the form, not just what you see. You also have to be aware of the invisible world. And I want to make a quick point here. That's the reason why figuration was employed in classicism to create stories, like religious stories, mythological stories, because at the philosophical level, it fits very well. It forces the artist and the viewer to think about the invisible world. Okay, so let's move on. I want to insert the leg into the pelvis. So this is the box for the pelvis. From the below the pelvic point, there is another pelvic point called the second pelvic point, and that's the insertion. That's where the upper leg will be inserted, and we are going to draw the upper leg as a cylinder. But because the upper leg is so foreshortened here, this is what you basically get here in terms of simple geometrical shapes. It's a cylinder that comes towards you. And then the lower leg goes away from you. It means that the cylinder will be this way. As you can see that this cylinder, and if you draw the central line, comes towards you, and this one goes away from you. So it's very good to know this directions of each mass. Let's now look at the other side. Just below the pelvic point, you draw the base of the cylinder for the upper leg, and then the cylinder for the lower leg, moving in the other direction. And then for the when you reach the foot, you want to draw a cube for the heel, like this, as it sits below the cylinder of the lower leg. And then from the cube, you're gonna attach another shape for the tarsal and metatarsal. The foot has some bones called tarsal here, tarsal bones, and metatarsal, and they fit really nice into a wedge-like shape like this. And then you divide this part here and you add the cylinders for the toes. And then you have the arch in here. And then I guess we still have time now to add a few muscles and bones. The knees, in order to draw the knees, you need to know the bones. You can't otherwise. So, for instance, the bone, the upper bone of the leg goes this way, and it has a condyle like a spool. It's like this. You can also put this spool into a box, and it has to have a central line. And this central line, and then you want to add the patella here. And then the condyles of tibia, which is the bone for the lower leg, you can summarize it as a half cylinder. And you draw the central line for this, and then just right below here there is called a kneeling point, and then you have the sheen, the bone. So at the top the bone starts three-sided, and then it ends up at the ankle in four-sided shape. Okay, so that's what basically you get here underneath. And then from the pelvic point, you draw this beautiful muscle that all the great masters in a lot of drawings in the show gather leaves. If you go, you will see this muscle in almost most of the drawings. It's called the sartorius muscle that wraps around the upper leg from the pelvic point, goes around the knee, and connects to the condyle of tibia right here, and then goes all the way down to the shin, all the way to the ankle. And this part is going to be this way. On the upper leg, important big muscles, you have the quadriceps. And you have three ones. You have vastus internus, the rectus, and the vastus externus. And the rectus, the muscle in it's a group of muscle called quadriceps. And then in the back you have hamstrings. Then you have the calf. So let me add it, like the sartorius muscles goes like this around the knee, and it inserts here. In figure drawing, and this is something that the book I showed you, Robert Hale, talks about, that the best way to learn anatomy is to learn where the muscles insert in the bone and where they end up. That is the process of learning. Okay, so now we have about, I guess, 5 minutes left, and I can spray it. And what I like to do is to add a general value from top to bottom on the side planes, just a general value. And let me create a value scale again to explain the process. And I'll explain the process in relationship to this cube. So you have to have a dark area. and you have to have a light area. This drawing is primarily based on this principle: light area and dark area and light area for all the forms in the drawing. For the cube, to explain it better, this will be the light, the dark area, and that will be the light area. Maybe I draw another cube. You know, I'm gonna do it here. So because I wanna explain this in the best possible way. Value is added according to cross contour lines. Cross contour lines are the lines that travel over the form, like this. You have to know, you have to know the back planes. So that's cross contour line. It can also be central line in case, but cross contour line usually it's when the lines really just travel over the form all around. For a sphere, have the axis. This will be the central lines. So if you want to add value, the best way is to really not go against the sides of the plane. If you go cross-hatching against the sides, it adds expression, but it doesn't do well for the three-dimensional effect. I'm not saying it's not good to use expressive lines. That's something else. But in terms of creating the illusion of 3 dimension, it's very important to use cross-contour lines that follow the edges of the planes. So, for instance, this is the dark area, and this will, because this is the black, this is the plane break. I'm going to have a darker area here, and this kind of fades towards what I mentioned is called reflected light, and this is dark. Now, this is the light area. In the light area, you want to add reflected shadow. But when you add the reflected shadow, which is a gradation, you do it following the form. You can go vertical, horizontal, or vertical. That's the best way to draw value on a cube. So you can add a slight gradation from this side. Okay, so this is called reflected shadow. And the top part is, it is still in the light area, but you don't want to have it competing with this front plane. I'm going to add 2 gradations. So I'm going to add a light gradation stemming from this side, and then a light gradation stemming from this side. No, from this side. So in this way, actually, you know what? No, it should be from this side to create the strongest 3-dimensional effect. It should be this way. So now the bottom should be really strongly emphasized, and then you have the cast shadow. The cast shadow is another gradation that, how can I say, the cast shadow. So what we did here is called form shadow. This is called cast shadow. Cast shadow, you have it in the Camuccini's drawing. You can see that it's a little bit darker at the edge, and then it fades out. However, the shadow in this drawing is quite emphasized on its own because it has symbolic meaning. What the meaning of this shadow is, and maybe I have, if I have, do I have any, how many minutes do I have? About 2-3 minutes. So it gives me time to explain the shadow, which is beautiful in Camuccini's drawing. A cast shadow embeds the form in the environment, but in Camuccini's drawing, it's more than that. It's more than a connection between the foreground, where the figure is, and the background, where the wall is, because that's what a cast shadow, this is what it does. It connects the foreground to the background, or the positive space to the negative space. But in this case, this one is quite emphasized as a form in its own, because these 2 figures are contemplating the figure. This is about the concept of eternity in classicism, and the beginning of art as well. So the shadow acquires symbolic meaning. Okay, so
Adrian, I'm just going to
yes,
interrupt for a small moment. So
yes.
we have about 10 minutes left. So I would encourage
Oh,
people to put your questions in the Q&A so that I can ask them of the artist as we come towards the Q&A.
Fantastic. Okay, then. So as I receive the questions, I will continue with my drawing by applying the value as I explain in this exercise. So you have to go from top to bottom and scan to see where are the side planes, and you want to add a general value. Let's say to the side plane of the rib cage, to the pelvis, to the cylinders, and then you want to use the white charcoal to add reflected light. And that's the creation. For instance, for the deltoid, you will have a strong shadow here. You can see in the drawing there is a strong shadow. And then you add reflected light. And then you want to use the eraser. I'll use the smaller one to add actually the pencil eraser is best here. So you see, I won't have time to go through all the forms of the body, but that's pretty much what you need to do for everything, and that's what Camuccini did. It applied the same principle of adding these values, as I explained, according to reflected shadow, dominant light, shadow, darkest dark, and reflected light. And you take this pattern and you apply it to all the masses in the form, and you will end up with this. Now it's just a matter of time to refine the drawing and get there. So yeah, I can take questions if there are questions.
Thank you. So a few people were wondering if you could show again the reference books that you use. People were
Sure.
interested in looking at those.
Robert Beverly Hale has called a book Master Class in Figure Drawing. There are many books published by him and on his lectures. He taught figure drawing at the in New York in the 80s. What's great about this author is that he took classical knowledge of drawing and rewrote it for contemporary needs. So if you look at our history, classical drawing, figuration, and the concept of mass kind of went out of fashion with abstract art. Neoclassicism was very strong by the end of 19th century, and then at the end of 19th century, when with the Impressionists, let's say, started with the Impressionists moving away from perspective according to mass conception, but ended up with abstraction that completely removed all content. And Robert Beverly Hale comes after a huge period of time when abstraction kind of dominated the market, the art market and the art world. And he was the one to really make it accessible for contemporary artists. And that's why I find him so useful in understanding what lies underneath Camuccini's drawing or Farinati's drawing, and because these are actually, this drawing is not made after a real model. It's all based on concepts and these construction lines that I just discussed. And once you know this structure, you can draw any human form from any point of view, from any angle you want, out of your mind. Yeah, if you want to draw a real model, then it's even, it's even better. Then you can apply this system, which you already have it in your mind, and then you compare it and contrast it to the model in front of you, and that's how you get naturalistic depiction. And that's what I learned from Robert Hale and from the great masters. If you read what Leonardo da Vinci wrote about the human figure, Albert Dürer, and other old masters, they all talk about mass conception.
Thank you. So another question that came up is some people were wondering, you used the eraser for a moment. Was that more to blend or to create highlight? And also, how would you choose when to use an eraser versus using a white pencil?
Yes. So um, this is the knitted eraser. This is the pencil eraser, and this is the white chalk. So this one is great for adding reflected light in the dark area, like here, because it gives when it mixes with the pigment of the charcoal, it creates a nice gray that doesn't compete with the white on the light in the light area. And so that's how I use it. I use it to really create that reflected light in the dark area. Um, the eraser, you can use it to clarify the light area even better, to maybe create transitions that you want. It's very important to know that everything is based on gradations. Like value starts from a dark point and then it kind of fades away. It's never even. Um, so, because this is what gives movement to the values, to the forms, it creates a dynamic image. So yeah, that's what I do. I use the eraser, but you can also use eraser, let's say for the dark area as well. If you feel that you want to brighten more, if you go too dark in certain areas, look, this one works just fine as well. But that's primarily how I use these two tools to
Thank you.
create. Yeah.
So we're coming to the end of our time together. Is there any last words, any last thing you wanted to share with people before I close the event?
Um, there is so much to talk about, but I will just mention more about this image, why I find it so interesting to look at, and I recommend everyone to go to the exhibition and try to look at this drawing in a contemplative way. What do I mean by contemplative eye? We kind of lost this in our visual culture. Collectively, we don't engage with images in a contemplative way. When these artists made these drawings, they made for viewers who would stare at this image literally for hours. Leonardo talks about his, for instance, for his drawings, that there were people staring at his paintings for 8 hours straight. I've been to the show at the National Gallery, and I haven't seen anybody looking for that long at a drawing. So it's just a way for us to reflect on how we engage with images today. And I want to mention that classical drawings primarily made drawings for contemplation. That is, to really look for a long time at the drawing and contemplate on the philosophical meaning of this image. The philosophical meaning of this image is that life is short, but art is long. And what matters is what you leave behind, like a shadow inscribed on stone. It's a type of thinking in art about eternity that a lot of contemporary art is not, don't care about it anymore. The concept of eternity, it's not popular anymore. Most of art today is more about perishable, present moment, nowness, temporality. I wanted to bring this to attention, that this drawing is about the idea of stillness, about eternity. Although there are contemporary movements like conceptual art, for instance, Justice Kossuth, for instance, uses the concept of eternity in his installations. So I just wanted to draw attention to this aspect. And another quick point is that in classical drawing, the technique incorporates perspective, proportion, value, light, composition. We didn't get to talk about composition, but they are employed effectively in order for the artist to visualize a story. So if you don't have a story to say, then this mode of drawing is not really useful to you. It's quite opposite to visual language. And let's say if you use abstraction or abstract way of drawing, to do this, you won't be able to draw this story, that this philosophical image that a classical drawing can visualize. So this will be my final point about what we just discussed today.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for your workshop, Adrian. I like
My
that
pleasure.
you mentioned taking longer than we usually think to look at something, taking the moment to sit and look for just a little bit longer when often we
That's right.
pass in front of artwork so quickly and don't take the time to slow down. So I think
Yeah,
that's a
today we are
beautiful
scrolling, we
place
are
to
not
be.
contemplating. So yeah.
Yeah, take a moment to look some more. So,
Mm.
thank you, Adrian, for the workshop. If you want to follow Adrian's work, you can do so on his website, adriangore.com, and on Instagram at adriangore.art. This session is the last English workshop of the 2025 online studio season. If you want to stay informed about future online workshops, you can follow the gallery on social media or you can sign up for the gallery's newsletter. We will put the links in the chat for you. Until the next season, you're invited to watch or rewatch past workshops. They're available on our YouTube channel. Gathered Leaves, Discoveries from the Drawing Vault, the exhibition that was mentioned in this workshop, is on display at the gallery until April 13th, 2025. So if you are in the region of the gallery, we hope that you can visit. Finally, we'd love to see what you drew tonight. You're welcome to share it on social media using the gallery's tags that you can currently see on screen. Or you can share your creations in the discussion of the Facebook event that was created for the workshop. Thank you to each of you for coming tonight. Thank you again to Adrian for the workshop. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for your time.